Okay, real quick, wanted to make a video to address something that came up on the internet today, and it was pretty scary, and I think a lot of folks might learn something here today, so let's go ahead and talk about it. I'm going to read the statement that was made in the comments section, and I'm going to address to you why I think this is a very, very bad idea, and I can give real-world examples. Tuning many factory triggers to feel better is easy on many models, improving the perceived quality dramatically. The answer to that would be no. Most likely, hell no. And this is the path straight to hell. Now, let me explain to you why this is. Let me grab some guns here. Because this is John 19:11, many of you are probably going to assume that the only thing that I'm talking about, or this concerns, is 1911 style guns. And striker fire guns, this doesn't apply to. That is not the case. So I'm going to go ahead and ditch the 1911, and I'm going to get a gun that I've seen this problem on more than any other handgun. It's probably a reflection because it's the 2000s and not the 1970s, but it's definitely an issue. Glock. All the striker fired guns are basically the same. There is some significant differences in some sear engagement surfaces, specifically the HKVP9, and I will address that as well. So here's the problem with the statement as it was written in that comment. Unless you are looking at a piece of metal and you know exactly what the metal is, you know what the hardness is, you know what the surface hardness is, you know what the hardness underneath that surface is, and if that metal was coated, and if that coating is providing hardness. Unless you can answer all of that, and you can correct, re-harden, reapply, a private individual getting out some areas of a sear or trigger and rubbing on them, filing on them, taking anything to those surfaces to make the trigger better may work initially. That's where it causes the problems. Guys will get out the parts, they'll work on them, and it'll be like, oh man, this trigger, oh, this is freaking awesome, right? This is great. But what happens is, if you don't know the answers to the questions that I just asked, in many instances, a piece of metal is hardened to a certain spec for its application. If a piece of metal is hardened too much, it can crack. For example, that's why barrels are not super, super hard, because if you harden them too much, they could break the other way, they could crack. If they're too soft, they wear, right? Well, depending on your application, what a lot of the manufacturers do, whether it's guns or vehicles or airplanes or any piece of equipment, the metal may be X hardness, but then the surface hardening might be on there to actually function within spec. And so the underlying metal could be much softer than what's on the surface. And if you are at home with a stone or some kind of product and you're rubbing on that thing, very likely you are going to push through the hardness that is on that piece of equipment to keep it from wearing or over-wearing, and you're going to be into the soft metal. And so, Bubba can, oh man, Bubba, he works on the greatest triggers, and they're fantastic. Oh man, Bubba did a great trigger job, and he's $30, and my Glock is great. A few thousand rounds later, that trigger completely shits the bed. Now, this story I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to name the gunsmith, but this happened. It's still happening, and it's been a mess. There's a nationally known gunsmith who was selling, as part of their package at their company, they were selling trigger jobs. And what they were doing is they're filing the stuff by hand. They're not engineers. They're not having products made. They're not sending stuff out to be hardened or coated. They're not selling you a trigger kit like Apex that's been designed inside and out to function within a certain spec. They were basically doing what Bubba does, and they were, doing it great. I know of multiple examples of trigger jobs from that shop where eventually on service pistols with police departments, those triggers started to fail. And so it basically became this kind of whisper campaign, X company, X trigger job, pull it all out. Because that guy didn't understand the engineering of the metal. He was a hell of a good shooter. He knows how to run a gun. He's not a Bubba, but he doesn't understand the mechanics. And he was doing what happens a lot of times with these, in these situations. Yes, you can get in there and you can start rubbing on stuff. And ideally, it wears better. But you're going to damage these guns. So I guess the next question is, all right, well, what's a good trigger job? I got the best trigger job that you can do at home, and it will last forever, and it will be warranted by the factory of the gun that you, from the company you bought it from. They are expensive, but they're perfect, and they're almost fail-safe. Dry fire. All right. You dry fire guns over and over and over again, and the parts will wear in better. Now, my policy always was, if somebody wanted to have a trigger job on, say, a rifle or a handgun, I would say, okay, buy yourself 1,000 rounds of ammo, go out and shoot it, and they'd be like, okay, all right, how's this going? Good? Yeah. Go out and buy another 1,000 rounds of ammo, go out and shoot it, come back, oh, hey, what was that? That's pretty good, right? Trigger's pretty good, right? Go buy another 1,000 rounds of ammo, go ahead and shoot that, come back, what do you know? You have this great trigger on this stock striker gun that basically is factory warranted, is good or better than what Bubba can do, and there's no problem. There's no damage to the gun. That's the best way to do it. It's not just Glocks. Any of you who are familiar with the HK VP9 series gun, hell of a nice gun, by the way. These are incredible guns. These are truly single action guns. And if you look at the back of the gun and you see where the sear surface engages, dry firing this gun does make the trigger job better. So, when I get a new gun or I'm trying to switch to a different gun, I don't switch that often, but I'm a big dry fire advocate. And you can dry fire thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds for free. And that's a free trigger job. And just the stuff wears in. Some of it is because you and your brain get used to the trigger. You master whatever trigger you're shooting. But there is, on the other direction, if your brain and your training is coming in from this side to get used to whatever trigger, there is some wear coming in on the other side, and it never crosses. It never goes Bubba and goes and becomes a machine gun. So hopefully, I can implore upon you, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're looking at a piece of metal on a trigger and you don't know what that metal is, you don't know what that coating is and what it's supposed to be doing and what the hardness is on top and inside, you got no business. You got no business touching any of that. And the two most common guns that I see go crazy because somebody's worked on them, Glocks, AR-15s. Not 1911s. Maybe it's because it's not 1970. Don't do it. Get off the internet. Buy triggers from people that are actually professionals at making triggers. This isn't about liability. This isn't about lawyer talk. This is real world advice. I've seen it over and over and over again, even in modern striker guns. Don't futz with your triggers. Hopefully, I've made my point.